Hey guys, welcome back to One Candle Society with your hosts, Marcus D.
And Vic Whaley.
Today guys, we have a special video for you today. Today we have our first guest ever on our channel. Joining us today is Christo Roppolo, featured in the great documentary, Curse of the Man Who Sees UFOs. He's here to talk about the documentary and his thoughts on the paranormal. Welcome to the channel, Christo.
Hello, how are you?
We're doing good. We're doing good.
Good to hear it. I'm glad to be here.
Cool. So, Christo, okay, so you were portrayed in the documentary that's on Netflix now called The Curse of the Man Who Sees UFOs, right?
Correct.
Okay, so
Correct.
you've watched the documentary, correct?
Obviously,
Yeah,
I had watched.
Okay.
We watched several different cuts of the movie before the final version of the film came out. You know, I mean, there's only so much a person can withstand seeing of themselves up on a big screen like that. But I made it through. You know, it was definitely interesting to see all the people in the audience going through this whole arc of emotions that Justin had created in the movie. So yeah, it's, you know, the film festivals showed me a lot about the audience and answered a lot of questions about making a movie that had a narrative and is still a documentary. You know, a lot of the films that I watch in this particular genre are kind of a lecture on film, and we tried to avoid that as much as possible and just stick with people and make it more of a human story. And, you know, the UFOs are obviously a big part of my life, so that, you know, that's part of the human story too. So, yeah.
Yeah, one of the questions we had for you, though, is do you feel like you were accurately portrayed in the documentary? You seem to have a very big personality. Like, do you feel like it really captured who you were?
Yeah, he captured who I was. I mean, I am, like you say, I'm pretty boisterous, and I have a tendency to use the F word a lot. I don't know, by the way, if I'm allowed to swear in this interview.
Well, we're going to have to edit it out for YouTube.
It kind of slips out, you know what I mean?
No, it's okay.
I did a interview for another channel, and I only slipped one time, which has to be some kind of a record for me. So
Oh, wow.
I'll try to be as well behaved as possible, but still entertaining.
I appreciate it.
So let's get on with it, man.
Oh, no problem. All right, well, then I'm going to cut to probably the question that I wanted to ask. So, in the documentary, there was a lot of UFO activity that was going on in the air. You had your personal UFO experiences that you had, and there was a couple friends that you had involved in there that talked about their own experiences with UFOs. Why do you think there's so much UFO activity in that part of the world?
Because I believe that they were here first, possibly, that they were here all along with us. And there's also a theory that I'm developing about the particular entities, orbs, UFOs, whatever you want to call them, and that is that these particular entities are occupying the same space we did after an event that occurred in 2011. There's a kid on the internet, I can't think of his name right now, but he's a very, very intelligent kid. He's one of the super scientists. And his work has been looked at and taken very seriously by some, you know, very, very major scientists. And his theory is that we're existing in this omniverse, right? Our universe and all the other universes with it exist and coexist side by side in the omniverse. But in 2011, when they fired up the CERN project and opened up that little tiny black hole, this kid believes, and to agree with him, the more I kind of test his theory, that our universe was instantaneously destroyed, like that. And we were moved over into another part of the omniverse instantaneously. And that's why, from 2011 on, if you look, there's a steady increase in all the paranormal activity, in all UFO activity, from that date to the day we are talking at this moment right now.
So were we transferred to
if you look at it as an algorithm, it's staggering how much of an increase there was from 2011 when they started doing those experiments. And they've tested that theory, and they're having a hard time punching holes in it. And, you know, now that we have quantum computers and we acknowledge that we can, you know, function in a quantum and even understand the quantum realm, it doesn't seem like very much of a stretch to me, especially with the kind of behaviors that I'm seeing, and some of the things that will be included in the second film, which I don't want to go into too much detail right now because we want it to be in the movie. But I believe that there's a lot more to this than just simple, little green men in spaceships. I think there's a plethora of life in the universe and in various other levels of our dimensions and our quantum realms, and we just don't know enough about that stuff to say categorically anything, and especially applying our science to it, because we already know how backwards our science is the more we find out each and every day. So, it's like take 5 steps forward, then take 2 steps back.
So in this theory, were we transferred to a universe that's just more conducive to like paranormal and
exactly, like a everybody. You've heard of a doppelganger,
yeah.
Right. So, and we know that there's positive and negative matter, and all of this stuff. So there's an opposite and equal reaction for everything, and I think that applies across the board in nature too. I think that all these different omniverses, it's kind of like that thing at the end of the Men in Black, where they find the little trinket that was around the cat's neck, and it's a little universe inside of there, right? That's kind of the same thing, we can't quantify how these things work, but we can be aware of them, and we're acknowledging them every day more and more, because obviously you guys are seeing real stuff, and I'm seeing real stuff, and if it's real, there has to be a reason for it, and that's what my big thing is. I want, first of all, to help people understand, and very simply, because, when they talk about disclosure, that pisses me off so bad to even hear somebody saying it, because the disclosure has already occurred. The fact that they're letting themselves see, letting us see them. There was by the way, day before yesterday, there was a report on the local news here in Monterey about a woman who runs the lighthouse down at Point Sur. And a lot of people, including myself, believe that it is extremely haunted. And this used to be a place that the Navy would use. There was a whole kind of little miniature town in there with a tram that ran food on a giant cable up into this mountain. Very, very strange place. And just the other day, the news reported that the woman who caretakes this place, and at the top of this mountain where this occurs, is also a CHP and sheriff's station. So this is not a person that's, whacked out or anything like that. And she's coming out of her office, and there's a large staircase that goes down into a sub-basement in this structure that she lives in up there. And she sees a woman in a long Victorian dress with puffed sleeves, her hair done up in a bun, walking down the staircase in just plain daylight, just like a regular person, just walking down the staircase. And she said, "You might want to use the railing. Those steps are really narrow." The woman turned and looked at her and vanished. But this just happened 2 days ago, and there's a lot of, I believe this area is, I guess for lack of a better word, kind of enchanted. And there are also a lot of people who believe in the Dark Watchers here, which have been written about by John Steinbeck's son, and who have been seen by people like Jack Kerouac. Orson Welles saw them. So yeah, they all believed in these Dark Watchers, and that they inhabit these woods, and that they almost look like a shadow, kind of, but like that's where they get their name from. So in the next few weeks, I myself and some other folks, we're going to go out into the woods, and we're going to do some observation out there, because there's that part of the movie, in the first movie, where we go out into the woods, and you can almost feel that vibe, you know, the faces in the woods and all of that kind of stuff. That just kind of all lent itself to us carrying on with some more research in the woods. And I've had friends who do tree work. You know, they're like lumberjack guys. They, you know, they cut down old trees and stuff. And a good friend of mine, on the same day that I was having a sighting while walking the dogs over by the airport, where there was this huge silver orb that was just sitting right next to the sun. And there was this thing that looked like an arrow that was satelliting around it, right? It almost looked like a little chemtrail, but it was a solid thing, and it was just moving around, this silver ball. And it sat there for the longest time, and I was just stunned. I didn't want to move. And all of a sudden, I get this phone call from my friend who's up in a tree, and he's seeing it too, but he's seeing it up in the air. And he's telling me that he can see this field moving around it that looked like a parachute or something, but it was just satelliting around the outside of it. And I guess that was the thing I was seeing, but from a different angle. And ever since that happened, he won't stop talking about UFOs, you know. And people who have had an encounter here in this area are having such profoundly important experiences that saying that this is, you know, nothing that we should be interested in or trying to focus our attention on, I think is just plain stupid. I mean, you know, that's like ignoring an elephant that's charging towards you and saying, "Oh well, you'll miss me, don't worry." You know. So the research to me is absolutely 150% critical to get the information, and being out in the field is how I believe you get the best information, and you find out the most about what it is you're studying, whether it's supernatural or it's monkeys or whatever the hell it is. So field research, yeah.
So there's been this huge increase of UFO activity in the area and all the stuff that people are seeing. Like, out in that particular area, are there other types of entities that people are reporting to see more? Maybe like up close encounter type?
Yeah, like this thing with the ghost. I mean, she was standing on the staircase not more than 5 feet away from this ghost, you know. Women that I have interviewed that will appear in the second film have had some extremely powerful experiences with entities coming across the bay to their home, having contact with them and their children in their home.
Like just ghosts?
I'll go into that more in the movie, but I can't give away too much right now. But there has been, and this is a big focus, I think, of the second film, is going about people's experiences, more about their lives, but also how it ties into this here, because you know, I try to get away from this area every once in a while, and I just keep getting drawn right back to it. There's 2 women that are very, very reputable professors that worked at a language institute and came to me after I did a premiere of the movie at the local theater here in town. And they had an experience with these entities that came across the bay as very small silver orbs. And the encounter that they had was very much like they were encountering a family of entities, and not just random objects or some little ball of light moving around. These were actually moving with purpose. And these 2 women have 2 perfect children, and they had these children in a very, very special way, and they had them after they had these experiences. And my theory about that is that they have been under the microscope, so to speak, for quite a while, and they just didn't know it themselves. But when they came to see the movie and they saw objects in the film that they had actually seen with their own eyes, not more than 10 or 15 miles away from my house. They just ran to me with all the information, and we went over to their house and did an interview with them, and some very, very interesting things happened while we were interviewing them, and I will leave it to your imagination what they were. That's as much information as I'm going to give you about that part of it. But there's lots of stuff that's going to be in it like that, and it's going to kind of bring people up to speed on what's happened with us since the movie came out, and that kind of good stuff. So anything else? Let's keep going.
So,
what else would you like to know?
One of the things that we were wondering about is how is it that you get such great UFO footage so consistently? I mean, I go out, I film the skies, and I don't ever get anything, but you come back with gold. How do you do it?
I am very lucky that over a period of time, I've developed a relationship with these things that comes from the signals. And the other night, I was signaling on this thing that I call the beer can, which is this big metal box that leads to an underground stairwell. And I like it because it has this kind of like industrial metal pop, so none of my equipment will slide around while I'm doing stuff. Because when I do my research, most of the time, unless there's guests that have come up to see a sighting or something, I'm by myself. So I'm trying to signal with 3 flashlights at once, film, and focus, and keep the objects in the center of the frame, because I'm a filmmaker. So I get crazy about that shit. It's like I look at them just like I do, when I'm making a fictional film. I want my subjects in front of the camera to look good and be proper, and I want everything to be right. Sometimes I've driven myself out of my mind with that stuff, but fortunately, after filming these things for years and years, a guy said, you got to really work a little bit on the focus. And I'm like trying to explain to this guy, when you see a UFO, if you can get a hold of a camera and photograph it, good luck. Because it's a really powerful emotion that is just running through you. The moment your brain, and like when I saw the big triangle in Seaside that's in the movie, at first, when I saw it, because Chewbacca was barking at it, he saw it first. I did what everybody else does. I just started running through my laundry list of trying to convince myself that I wasn't seeing what I knew I was seeing. And it wasn't until they started reforming into different shapes that a noise came out of me from my diaphragm. Like I've never yelled in my life. And I just started running down the middle of a street, which had just been changed from its name, which was Broadway, to Obama Way. And when that sighting was occurring, the Vice President Biden was in town campaigning for President Obama, not more than 4 or 5 miles away from where this was happening. And, I could see the airport tower. I was calling everybody out of their houses, yelling around like, Paul Revere or something, and it was, you can't feel that kind of feelings. But I believe when they come like that to you, and this thing with them coming over my house too was another kind of heads up for me that they wanted to talk. I didn't realize it at first. I was just thinking, these are random things. And then I started finding out from a friend of mine who was an astronomer and kind of a local historian. His name's John. He started talking to me about the Rumsen Indians and how they would worship their gods that they would see over the mountains of Santa Cruz. And they would do these fire dances. And it just so happened that these fire dances, these signals that they were using, were actually numbers that calculated out to be prime numbers. And they would do it in sets of 3. And so just on a whim, It's like, I wonder, I mean, is it possible that these things are able to perceive, us from whatever? I mean,
is that where the glasses thing at the end of the documentary comes from? Then, like when you're lifting the glasses up, like saying like you're gonna signal the prime numbers. That's what I thought.
What I started noticing was I could use the signals in the daytime and the nighttime, and when I would wear my glasses, the sun would reflect off my glasses, and I would be counting, and my head would be bobbing in time with the numbers I was counting. And I didn't realize it, but the light that was reflecting off my glasses while I looked up into the sky was actually bringing these little orbs. There's some daytime orbs in the movie, but there will be more daytime stuff in the next film, including a flying saucer or two, which I think will definitely surprise the shit out of some people, especially when you see a flying saucer just fly into the frame and do one of these classic defy the laws of gravity moves, and then just kind of make this little turn and shimmy jam out. But yeah, the daytime stuff is very very unpredictable, because that usually happens in the high sky, and I've noticed that the most of the UFO activity that I see, first of all, is not in space. It's in the atmosphere. It's below us, right above us. I mean, a few thousand feet up in the air. So what they're doing up there, I couldn't really tell you, but I know that a lot of the activity centers around what we're doing up there, especially with all of the jet chemtrails and all of the good stuff that we're putting up in the air. I have a clip that I put up on my YouTube channel that shows like a 16 or 17 foot long piece of chaff floating around in the air after a jet dropped it out of the back of it, for miles and miles and miles. It looked like a dragon flying around. And I've actually seen, people's UFO stuff where they think that is UFO, and I'm like, no, that's actually chaff. Which is my other problem that I have, is I see a lot of UFOs for whatever reason, probably because I'm signaling them, and very few people signal. A lot of times people will show me stuff, and I hate being the person to tell them it's not a UFO, because everybody wants to own it, and so the answer to your question is, I think it's a gift. I think they pick people. I was told by Tom DeLonge, the singer of Blink-182, that is a big researcher of UFOs, is in our next movie as well, that, I just lost my whole train of thought there, Chewbacca. What was I just saying?
No, we have that effect on people. You're okay.
But so this signaling thing, is this the sort of thing that like we could go outside and do? Is this something that like we could experiment with here?
Yes, absolutely. I tell people this, and they don't believe me. And then every once in a while, one of my fans will send me a clip of them doing exactly that. I tell people, look, there's the Robert Binghams and the Stephen Greers, and they claim they have some kind of spooky power and blah, blah, blah. It's not that. It's acknowledgement, respect, okay, and belief. And these things are all real. They're not some kind of spooky magical power. And the signals, I believe that they work, because these, especially the research I'm doing with these sphere objects, they react to these signals because they've been reacting to them for a long time. So it was just a question of doing something that they were already familiar with, I think, that made the difference for me. Really believing that these signals work. I mean, you should have seen the look on this. Tom DeLonge has this whole team of people, some of them that worked for the government, right? Studying UFOs and studying their technology in top secret places. And one of those guys was there, but I could tell within minutes, he couldn't tell the difference between a plane and a UFO if his life depended on it, even though he called himself an expert, because he was doing what everybody who comes in with that kind of an attitude because they really haven't seen very many UFOs and they resent it, or they use it as some kind of skepticism to project on somebody else. You know, they just have this vibe and this disrespect, this, you've got to show me, you've got to prove it to me. And the UFOs can sense that. I know it for a fact because we had a guy that was such a believer in UFOs, but he didn't believe in the signals or in me using them or that we could see them or perceive them with our naked eye without a night vision scope. And he was driving me nuts. He was against it. And I was like, would you just shoot it? Right? And I couldn't get anything to work right, and it was a nightmare. The camera, and as soon as he left, because he just kind of threw in the towel and gave up, and it was super windy, and there was this girl there who was also filming, another guest. As soon as he left, I swear to God, within 5 minutes, the first big orb showed up, and then another one, and we got one on film, and there was that. And it was like literally the whole mood calmed down. Everybody was happy and laughing again just because one gloomy gust left the area. And the UFOs responded to it immediately, like they could feel what we were feeling, you know. And there's some people who call themselves experts on the UFO field that I respect because they acknowledge that these entities can sense our emotions, and whether they can see our aura because it's a source of light, and maybe they're that sensitive to light, or they can perceive light in a different way that we perceive it, and that light is some kind of a form of communication because they are winking at each other. They, in case you didn't notice, in that shot where that squad of orbs flies over my neighbor's house, those orbs are signaling each other the whole time. They are, if you play it black in slow motion, you will see it clear as day, and they are using prime numbers. And they're moving like a squad, okay? And, you know, the camera never does anything justice when you film it, but to the naked eye, to all of us that were standing there watching that, those things were as big as cars, and they were amorphous, and they were changing shape, but keeping kind of a unified oval thing with various other things happening on the outside that were the amorphous part. That was such a life-changing event for me because it just shuts the up everything that you've heard about what reality is and about what, you know, the UFO subject and all of the supernatural stuff. Anybody that says it's not real, like I've said over and over, and that's the biggest thing about me, is just listen to me, okay? It's real, okay? I wouldn't be doing this. I'm not doing this for my health, right? I don't go out to the beach every single day that I can and sit there from dusk until sometimes dawn with 2 cameras and 2 dogs doing nothing but making my wrists hurt. You've never had pain in your wrists like I have, and it's not for off, okay? It's for taking those flashlights and signaling with them. And, you know, I'll be there for hours doing it because just when I think the conversation is over, they'll pop out and start doing another triangle or something, and I'm like, oh my God, you know. So in a way, it's a blessing, and in a way, it is definitely, just like the title of the movie, a curse.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I was meaning to ask you something. You've brought up a lot of people in the field, and one of the questions that I have, you talk about in the documentary and even here in this interview, a lot of very you know, kind of like paradigm shifting stuff, and have a lot of people that have tried to do similar things have had problems with either the authorities or the government, Men in Black type scenarios where people have talked to them. Dan Aykroyd has made comments of it.
I've had it happen too. I've had it happen. There's a Men in Black in the movie. Did you notice? When I'm talking and we're walking by the bank, and I'm talking about how my brother withdrew all my money out of the bank. If you look in the background, there's these 2 people that cross in front of the camera. And while they're crossing in front of the camera, this guy dressed in black steps out from behind a wall where there's no door. And as he steps out, he's clearly there. This couple crosses in front of him, and within 2 frames, he's gone.
I know what I'm doing as soon as we're done talking.
Yeah, we're gonna watch this documentary after this. We did not catch that.
The editors were the ones that pointed it out to me. I didn't even see it until they pointed it out to me. I was like, I'll be it's a guy in black. But I've also had Chinook helicopters fly up to me, and a guy whose name I can't tell you, but he was one of the advisors in Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters, and he came to a sighting with me, and we had just this profound experience, and he wouldn't film. He brought these really super powerful binoculars that he would use to debunk people who thought they were seeing UFOs. And he looked through his glasses for about 45 seconds or so, and just put his glasses down, sat down for a second. He was looking at me, and I'm like, what? And he's like, that's a real thing. And I'm like, I know. Put your glasses back on and keep watching. Could you please film with your phone? He's like, no. He's like, no, I don't want to film. I just want to look. And he stood back up. And, you know, he had like 2,000 millimeter Nikon, these like night vision, everything. And he was just stunned, you know. And I'm like, well, you know, tell a friend. But then you have the other guys, you know, that come out and they don't care what they're seeing. Their brain is still going to tell them it's a plane. It's something explainable. Blah, blah, blah. I could show them, like when I go out into the field, I bring an iPad with me, and it has all the times, arrival, schedules, what planes are in the air, what's coming, what's been diverted to Monterey, everything. So when I'm looking at stuff, I know what's a plane and what's not a plane. And that's why I do the subtitles below, because those are not just my opinions. Those are facts. That's what's really going on when you're watching those things. And I've had, you know, a lot of nice people come out. One was a cinematographer who I wanted to have film the second movie, but he showed me a little trick with my camera that I've been using for 4 years that has made such a big difference in my UFO photography that you will, and you know, some of it is already on my site and will be some of the stuff that will be in the second film. But the advantage of that is now it's on the big screen. It's going to be color timed. It's going to be beautiful. It'll be like you were there seeing it yourself. And I love that. That's why I told everybody we're not doing some TV show. You know, I want to make a movie where people go and they're not watching the little screen with all the distractions in their living room and everything. They're sitting in a big dark room that smells like popcorn, looking up like they should be, instead of looking at their cell phones every day so they could see UFOs. And now they get to see them bigger than on a 30-foot wide screen. That is the difference between our movie 2 and the other ones. And I think a lot of these people that are doing the research and stuff, they're really in the field because they want to sell books about it. And unfortunately, a lot of the books that I've read on the subject are old information and rhetoric that I've been aware of for years. So there I go again, another long-winded answer.
So, what advice would you have for someone who's had an experience, but they're just kind of still sitting on it, still afraid to come out with it?
Try to bring a camera, something that you can use, because a picture is a memory and it positively reinforces your experience. Capturing any kind of information like that is a record of your efforts, and it also kind of puts you in the mindset of, I want more of this. So when you go out into the field, you're asking for it, right? You are mentally prepared for this. If you go out, like I said, with a bunch of questions, and you don't just accept that this is why you're here, so let's open up to it, I don't think you're going to to get many results. But I think the people like yourselves, like myself, who are open to it, we're just doing the right thing. That's all.
Yep. There needs to be more people like us out there doing that.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And well, not only that, but more people like us out there doing it who will respect it.
Yep.
Okay? It shouldn't just be the crazy old dude that says all the time that gets to put a movie out.
Now,
Okay?
now, don't feel bad. There's still the crazy young guy who says that too. That's me.
But, I mean, I'm an eccentric character, my friend. I am a fringe character. I have the most strangest life. Most people would probably go crazy if they lived the way I do. I am either working on the research or working on music or trying to figure out how to make the next movie. It drives my dogs crazy. Okay, So, yeah, it's a little bit manic, but I am who I am, and I got to do what I got to do, and it's become my girlfriend as well. So that's that. It's kind of a life mate now. So.
And I know a lot of
How do
our.
you feel about your research? How do you feel about your research when you're out doing it?
Love it. I live for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're having a lot of memories that you're developing with some of your closest friends going out and looking into the stuff of the paranormal. And one of the cool things about it is when you see something, you have a special story that not a lot of people can share or can talk about. So, that's one of the things that I love about doing
this. I'm really
this.
grateful for that. I tell everybody, like you were saying, does anybody else have? People send me these clips. They'll go out and signal. The one that really struck me was this family that was in some place like Dakota or someplace like that, and they sent me this clip. I had it stored away somewhere, and this woman and her kids are sitting in their backyard, and it's in some farming community. There's no mountains. They're not near any ocean or anything. And this guy sent me this email, and he said, what do? I don't have an ocean. I don't have mountains. I'm like, wherever the sun sets, start signaling there, towards where the sun is setting. And as the sun leaves, continue to signal into the horizon, not into the high sky. It's sure as shit. He sends me this clip where he's doing that, and a huge Eggman orb just poof appears, then a second one, and I was just so happy for him. I was cheering. Every time somebody sends me these clips, I get so excited because I know it's that simple. You just have to open up to it, do the signals, be dedicated, don't get frustrated and say to yourself, oh, this isn't going to work, or start looking around. Or another mistake that people make that drives me crazy, and there's this one girl who I really, really like. She's a fellow researcher, and at first she would drive me nuts because as soon as she saw one UFO, she'd start looking around for others. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, look, be grateful. That one's right there in front of you. More than likely, if any more are going to show up, it'll probably be somewhere in that area. It's kind of like duck hunting. Where there's one duck, there's bound to be another one. You just got to sit in the blind and wait a little bit longer, So, anyway. But, yeah, that's kind of what's going on out here in Monterey. I really hope that everybody that watches the movie really, really, truly understands that this stuff that's in there, we were so hard on ourselves about wanting to portray everything in the most real fashion possible and, to be so open about it. So, yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on your show today, be your first guest, and talk about this in a comfortable setting with two fellow people who also know that the metaphysical is a lot more than just some theory,
Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us.
Yeah, if people want to reach out to you, to send you, try to get in contact with you, try to send you their UFO footage, what would be the best? Oh, good luck. Fair enough.
Good luck. Now, let's say go through all the channels that you went through. I get avalanched by people for doing it.
It's like, good, they got to do the legwork like I did in order to be able to get this done.
Yeah, well, you know, it's like the folks up in Washington, you know, Stephen Greer, the Seaside Society, all that stuff. Those people pay to go up there, okay? That costs them some money to go up and do that. People come here, and I do it. To be honest, I've been overwhelmed many times already, and have said, "What was I thinking when I said this? Come on, and I'll show you for yourself." I was just being Christo, and I want people to know this is real. So yeah, I've had probably 125 guests come and watch sightings. Some of them have become really good friends, and that's what I really liked was meeting people from different walks of life who I never would have met before, and I met them because of these things. It's really strange. My life, the more I pursue this, the more people I get to meet and what have you. But honestly, to answer your question, I get completely overwhelmed because, you know, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, which I won't do Twitter because the president's on it. I can't stand that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough.
Enough said there. I've tried to get people to just come over to my YouTube thing. You know, if you want to talk on the Facebook thing, I look and I read all of those, like every other day or something. I read all the Facebook stuff, but I try to answer people mostly on my YouTube channel because it helps me with followers and stuff and getting some numbers so that it draws more interest. And it's just an easier platform for me to answer on. With these other platforms, these social media platforms, there's all these pop-up boxes and 5,000 different choices, and there are all these cryptic little icons. And I'm like, you know, this is harder than focusing on a UFO flying around in the air. What are we doing here? So,
would you like to share your Facebook and YouTube channel with our audience?
Yeah,
I have gotten all over the internet, checked out so many people's things every day, but I've been trying to keep myself kind of focused on entertaining people when there's no UFOs, because, you know, I'm a musician and a sound designer, so that creative bug is also in me all the time too. So I post a lot of videos of tributes to things that I like, that I think are funny, that I think will entertain people, and I put my music on there so that when there's nothing to see in the UFO realm, there's something for you to just kind of be entertained by. And it turns out that Tom DeLonge's new company, this Starlight thing or whatever, they will not only be trying to build an actual warp drive spaceship, which is part of their goal, but also they'll be making science fiction films and stuff like that. And that's kind of the same thing. You know, 1 minute we're showing you real UFOs, and then the next minute we're trying to keep you occupied by some kind of cutting-edge entertainment, right? So you know where you're at when you come here. It's, you know, I see those things as being kind of a good idea because, like what you're doing, you know, you're doing your research and you have your show on YouTube so that, you know, you can reach out to people, and that's a form of entertainment, whether we want to admit it or not. So, you know,
or at least we hope someone finds it entertaining.
Yeah, we hope people find it entertaining. We do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, dude, you know, you see somebody float across the room and they're not touching the floor. That's pretty entertaining, you know. So, have you guys photographed any other stuff that you're seeing?
No, not really. We haven't had a whole lot of luck on getting visuals. We've got some interesting audio here and there, but not a whole lot as far as visuals yet.
Mm-hmm. We're still working on it.
Farmhouses, or where do you go? The farmhouses, or what kind of places? Because we used to have a lot of old abandoned military buildings, and one of them was this place called Stillwell Hall, and we were filming my second movie, The Wooden Gate, which is on Vimeo if anybody wants to go see it. And we would have the strangest things happen. Equipment would move from one room to another without anybody touching it, and, you know, it was just crazy stuff was going on in that building, and they finally tore it down. But once we were in the building and we were filming this scene that was inside of a crawl space that was below this really old building in the sub-basement, and while we were crawling around in this tunnel, I mean, no way out. There's only at either end is a door, and it's like, a half-mile long concrete tube. Why we would go in there, I don't know, but it was an atmosphere we wanted. So we go in there, and all of a sudden there's an earthquake. We're stuck in this concrete tube. You've never seen people scurried out of a concrete anything so fast in your whole life as we did when that happened. I was certain that some kind of creature was going to bust through the wall at any second when I heard that noise. But, it was bad enough it was an earthquake, so.
Ellie's giving us the wrap it up sign. We're about to hit time.
All right, so
Okay.
the documentary is Curse of the Man Who Sees UFOs. It's on Netflix. You guys check it out. Christo, we super appreciate you coming on
Thank
to
you
our
so much.
onto our channel and to do
My
this interview
pleasure,
with us.
and I really enjoyed being on your show, and I wish you the best of luck because you guys are very, very, very cool. And so keep it up and get out there and do the dance, my friends, okay?
Yeah, but Christo, don't forget, man. Keep believing.
Because we'll keep listening.
I will always, my friend. Not to the day I die. You heard me say it. That's how I feel about it. It's got to be this way, unfortunately for me. I've kind of changed to it, but I don't regret it. All I can hope for is that someday we'll be able to make some kind of progress. And one other thing I wanted to mention that I noticed in my research recently, and it was very telling. After the Mandalay Bay thing that happened in Las Vegas, it was an extremely clear night. That night and the night after. And on clear nights, if I have a visual of those mountains, I can signal and they will show up. The day of the Mandalay Bay thing, there was not a peep, not one flash, not one signal, not one tiny little baby orb, nothing. Then, when that thing happened in New York and that guy ran all those innocent people over,
Yeah.
same thing, super clear night. There was no reason they shouldn't have signaled back. And again, it was totally silent. It was almost like there was a mourning going on. Like they had sensed our stupidity. And I'm just going to say this about that. The world is affected by everything that we do that's negative or positive to each other. So if we keep doing negative to each other all the time, that's what we get. That's the reward we give each other. So my suggestion to all of you out here who are listening to this show is go out and do something good for somebody. Make sure that you do that at least once a week. And do it because you want to do it. Don't do it because you have to. And that'll change the world. That'll open our eyes. And then we'll know what the truth is about all the natural stuff that's happening around us and the supernatural.
Well, that's an awesome sentiment there, man. I really like that.
Again, man, we appreciate you doing this interview so much with us, man. We really do.
I really had a good time, and I wish you guys well. You have a good day.
You have a good one too,
Thank
man.
you for the opportunity.
No, thank you. All right, bye.
Bye.
Okay. Peace.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out our video with our interview with Christo Roppolo. I know that we had a great time interviewing him, and really we're grateful that he took the time to come onto our channel and talk to us today. In the description below, we're going to put a link to both the Facebook page for Curse of the Man Who Sees UFOs, as well as a link to Christo's YouTube channel so that you guys can check it out. But don't forget, keep believing.
Because we'll keep listening.